let's get started. So today then, talking about gait and gait analysis and everything else that goes around gait and running.
Well, the running technique as well, yeah.
Yeah, running technique as well. But yeah, a bit of injury and efficiency and other things as well. So let's get started then. So so I'm Andrew. Hopefully, if you're on my Facebook, then you've already known me. And we're with Colin from. I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm cyclist as well, based out of Sheffield, Hope Valley in Chesterfield. Work in the running clinic at Accelerate, independent running store Accelerate in Sheffield, and often a whole variety of treatments, same sort of thing. But yeah, specialist in, I suppose, sort of looking at how you move, trying to link that to the injury and any running technique changes, really. I suppose in a quick summary.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so with gait analysis, why do we need to worry about how we're running? I
suppose then just give us that little bit of information. It can help us address a few issues to identify how, so you understand how you're moving, because everyone's different and everyone will run slightly differently. So I think if you have an understanding about how and why you're moving in the way you do, it sometimes makes sense of a lot of injuries. So if you get recurring injuries or I suppose moving on to different types of injuries, you have something and then something else and something else as well. If you want to look at making any changes to your running style or the way that you move, you've got to know where you are to start with, and then how to change that safely, which we'll talk about a little bit over the next hour, hopefully. And if there's any sort of potential issues, we do have people coming through that just want to have a look at how they're running, because they want to either go a little bit faster or a little bit further. And if we feel that there's going to be any potential problems that we can highlight early in that stage. So it's not just for, I suppose, sort of really good runners. We do get a lot of people that come in that are just starting off on their running journey, and they want to make sure that they're in running as well as they can be, really, or any potential issues that we may feel that they're going to come across as their running time and distance goes up. So it sort of just gives you that overall outlook, really, of how you're moving, really, and any problems. But I think if you are going to go into a gait analysis, you sign up either through a shop or a clinic or wherever you go and do it, sort of have an understanding about what you want to get out of it as well. That's important. So a lot of people come in and they want to have a gait analysis, but they don't really, and sort of one of the questions you ask them is, right, what do you want to get out of it? What do you want to see? And they haven't really thought about that. So from your own point of view, if you are going in to have a gait analysis, just have those sort of questions in your head beforehand. What do I want to get out of this? What do I want to see? What am I going to do with this information? This is the important thing as well. How are you going to use it? So yeah, so it can just, I suppose, give you that bit more information about how and why you're moving the way you are, basically.
Okay, so with when we look at people running, especially whether they be elite runners or beginner runners, and we find there's quite a lot of variation from one person to the next person, which we will kind of expect with people having sort of different skeletons, different muscle strengths. So basically, there's a lot of variation in people's musculoskeletal systems and the way that they move. So is there a correct way of running? Can we put people into a group and say, this is how you should be running, and this is you're doing this, and this is what you should be doing? Is it
yeah, it's sort of dangerous thing if you do go down that route, and it sort of follows on a little bit when we talked about shoes. Is there sort of an ideal shoe, or there isn't really, because everyone's going to be slightly different, and sometimes your past history of sport, so if you've just not done anything for 30-40 years and then got up and started to run, your body's going to be in a very different physical shape. The way you've probably, if you sat behind a desk for all that time or driven the car and not actually done anything, again, your body's going to have sort of adapted into that position. So soft tissues are going to have adapted and changed compared to, say, someone who's been active all their life, or not necessarily running, but say, someone like a postman or someone that does a little bit more physical activities can have a very different way they use their body than someone that hasn't done that. So it's really difficult to say that there is an ideal running form and everybody should try and adapt to it. But what we try and do is use some basic principles which again we can sort of talk about when we look through some of the slides. But I think if people adhere to the basic sort of principles of what is good running technique, good running form, which is basically all about posture, then that's the best place to start. Where we shouldn't all be ideally trying to achieve, I suppose, middle distance track runners that we see on the TV or the Olympics, and they're all absolutely looking like they're making it effortless, because most of us are never going to get there. Our bodies just don't allow us to do that. We've got too many years of sitting behind desks and whatever behind us, or fixed in too many positions basically. But we can have that in our head when we're running, and almost have that sort of visualization about this is how we want to be moving is a really good thing. But yeah, if we're going to achieve it, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, I think that's quite a hard thing for some people to grasp, isn't it? Is we can't compare sort of everyday club runners to the elite people that we see on TV, and I think that's quite often that's the mistake that a lot of people make, is they're trying to replicate what the elites are doing.
Yeah, and that's often where the gait analysis is good. It'll sort of show you really where your strengths are, where your limitations are. Really, yeah. So we don't try and over push ourselves, and we do work within our limits as well. And if we are trying to change some of these things that we'll talk about in a little bit, we do it in a safe way as well. That's important. So we're not trying to put big changes in really quickly. It's got to be a gradual process over a period of time for it to be most effective.
Yeah, so it's the same as if you're trying to change the way you move. It's the same as when you starting a new exercise regime, of just taking slow changes and letting your body adapt over time.
Yeah, and using complementary exercises as well. So using static, dynamic exercises, and also running drills as well. So you're breaking down those movements into the component parts, working on those specifically, and then trying to build them up is a really important thing to do. So we're training our body to work in that very different way.
Yeah. So just trying to basically break down the different movements and build them up into more complex motor patterns.
Yeah, so people are coming into the clinic and they're coming in for a gait analysis, and with the idea of looking at changing how they're running. So we'll do the analysis, we'll do the normal sort of biomechanical assessment, we'll do the running analysis using the video, and then we'll look at what we need to change and then how we do that. So we'll incorporate sort of certain specific exercises. So it could be, to start with, we just concentrate on basically just posture with some people. We'll get them to stand tall and basically just try and do a running arm swing without actually moving. We may even start even less than that and look at just activating some muscle groups like the glutes, hamstrings, maybe even doing some breathing exercises, and then to just start building that up. So we'll go through the arm swing and holding the posture correctly, and then when we start moving, we may just concentrate on the knee lift, and then concentrate on the push, so the heel lift out behind, and we'll just do certain drills that are really focusing on doing those movements really well. So individually, we break down the running style into the individual components, get those really well worked, and then try and build it back together. And again, use specific running drills to introduce those. And then you can sort of feel that transition changing. And if you're not ideally at one of those sessions, we'll try and get somebody from a video analysis looking as if they're in a better position. It's going to feel weird. And this is a problem with sometimes changing running technique. It does feel really strange to start with, because you're putting your body right out of its comfort zone. Which is why the video is really useful, because you can see it looks good, but it may be not feeling that great. But you've got to keep, when you're running, going back into finding that optimal position that we're seeing on the video analysis.
Yeah. So if somebody comes into your clinic and they're after a gait analysis, what sort of prompts you to maybe change the way their gaits? Rather than not changing the gait, what factors are you looking for?
Well, we're looking if there's an injury. So again, injuries that we've talked about before are overload issues. So the body is being subjected to more force and more stress than it's happy with. So we need to identify that. So the gait analysis will be used to identify why you're putting more pressure through. So if it's runner's knee, anterior knee pain, that classic sort of pain down across the middle of the kneecap. So we've got to look at what aspect of the running form is actually overloading that, and usually it's because we're going into a little bit of an overstride, so the contact position is too far out in front, which is causing a big load through the knee at the initial impact. But we've got to look then at the rest of it. So rather than just concentrating on that, we need to look at, well, why is that occurring? Why are we overstriding? Why is that happening? And it's usually because we haven't got a very good push off. So if we're not pushing off very well, what we have to do is pull the leg through much faster, much further through, and it's creating then that overstride. So we've got to look at, well, why aren't we pushing off? So we try and sort of build that picture, sort of, I suppose, go through that detective process and find out what's happening. So sometimes what we're treating on the gait analysis, or what we see from the gait analysis, may be quite different to where the symptoms are, which is important as well. So we're going, right, what we've got to do is you're not pushing off properly because we're not engaging the glutes at the right time. So even though they're very good at maybe doing static sort of squats or doing clams and that sort of thing, we're feeling nice and strong. What they're not doing is getting into that position when they're running. So we're not getting the leg to come out behind them by the glutes sort of working and the hamstrings working. So we'll go and do some activation and work through the hamstrings, through the glutes in a static position. We'll do some in standing position. We'll start introducing it when you walk in, and then introduce the running drills as well. So rather than just somebody coming and go, right, my glutes aren't working, okay, try and run in this way, we'll try and identify why they're not able to do that in the first place, and then start at the very basic exercise, and if they can do it, fine, then we'll move on to the next one until we get to the point when they're into that running position.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point with strength. So we can have somebody that's got super strong glutes, but they may not be moving in the correct way, or the way they're moving is overloading certain tissues. But just adding more strength to a muscle group doesn't necessarily change the way that somebody moves. Because we know there's quite a bit of research on the clam exercise, where people are lying on the side, lifting their legs up. And the idea was, if people carried those out, then they'd strengthen the glute muscles, and that'd help them hold the pelvis up. But yeah, just it doesn't transfer into practice. So it's actually trying to learn that motor control as well as getting the strength into the system as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get very strong glute exercise, but what you need to be able to do is translate, like you said, into running action. You need those glutes to be working at the correct time during that gait cycle, and that's the important thing. And we'll see a lot of people that are doing a lot of strength work, a lot of glute work, but they're not getting a body in the right position at the right time to actually make sure that they're working, and that's really important. And you'll only see that from a proper gait analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just see if there's any questions coming through here. Oh, we've got a couple. Hello, Anna Cook. Hello. Do people generally go back to their old habits despite the retraining?
That's always a big question. This is why the process of activating the muscles, doing the specific exercise and the running drills is really important. Because you can make a change short term, it's dead easy. We can get almost anyone in on the treadmill and get them to change, but it's making that change sustainable and long term, which is the important thing. And it's a little bit of an evolving process as well. So just because we get it in the clinic, it doesn't necessarily mean it's just going to stay there straight away. So you've got to be aware of how your body's moving, and often just keep going back to the real sort of basic setup exercises that we do. Because honestly, you just feel you slip back a little bit. Your body's going to work really hard to go back into old habits, and there's probably going to be other factors as well involved. So if you are sitting down all day at work or behind a desk, and then you get up and try and move it, your glutes are not going to be activated at that point. They've just been sat on all day. Hamstrings are not going to be working. You're going to be overactive through the hip flexors, and as soon as you start moving, your body's going to just go, actually, it's easier for me to just pull through my hips and not worry about the glutes. So before you start running, you've got to think, well, I've got to do my hamstring activation exercises, I've got to do my warm-up drills, I've got to do my running drills, and then I can go for a run, because it's easy just to slip back. So it is sustainable, but for a certain period of time, you've got to put the work in there to change that movement pattern from your old movement pattern into the new movement pattern. And how many thousands of repeats you need to do is, various bits of evidence out there. But the more you can work in the right position, the more sustainable those changes are. So again, it's doing all your exercises, doing all your movements, the way you stand, the way you walk, the way you move, you've got to be moving in the right way, not just when you're running, which for most people isn't the majority of their day. It's a very short period of their week almost. So you've got to make the changes, I suppose, not quite lifestyle changes, but you've got to be aware of how you're using your body the whole time. So how you're sitting, standing, walking, all play a role in this as well. So they can be made sustainable, but yeah, you've got to work at it a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Got.
That helps, Anna.
That's from Katrina Dorothy Corby. That question was. Yeah, she's asked another one, which I think we've probably answered there as well. It's a question from Chris Webb. For the beginner who wants to run, would you encourage S&C for a period of time before they commence running to reduce injury risk, then work on a technique a few weeks down the line?
I think the two go together. I'm really keen on getting people moving, but moving in the right way as quickly as possible. There's often this debate goes around about technique or strength first, and I think both need to go together. So complementing your running with strength and conditioning is, for me, is the best way to do it. Because most people want to start running if they've made that decision, and then for them to come in and be told, actually, you can't run, you've got to do a couple of weeks of strength and conditioning. I think it's sort of demoralizing for people. And I think if they're following that couch to 5K program, of which there are loads out there, which really does put you through a really, really slow gradual build up for the first few weeks, it's the best way to do it, really. And incorporate your strength and conditioning into that. I think as soon as you can get moving, the better. Brian, you've got no other underlying issues or you're recovering from an injury or anything. I think the sooner you're actually moving, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think both, strength and conditioning and the running, they do have to go hand in hand, definitely. Question from Sarah Carr: would you recommend gait analysis in a running shop?
It depends. That earlier statement, what I said, it depends what you went out of it, and you've got to look at the people that are offering that gait analysis. Now, there are some very good independent shops that have some really good, knowledgeable staff in, and I don't want to sort of say carte blanche no, but you've got to look at the person who's. The data captures the easy bit. It's what you do with that information that's the important thing. So you've got to look at what the credentials of the person are offering that gait analysis, what you're going to do with that information. That's the important thing. So I think the location isn't necessarily essential, but how are they actually capturing that information and what you're going to do with it. So yeah, so we'll talk about some of the ways we do it. I mean, you've got to have a camera that can use slope, which most people have now because you can do it on your phone to a certain extent. But yeah, it's the person that's the important thing, not the location.
Yeah, and I think if we go back to the webinar, the last webinar that we did on Thursday, then I think that ties in quite nicely with that question, the one about buying running shoes and what to look for there. Okay, let's check, see if there's any more questions. Can't see any. Okay, so go back to that screen. Quite a common question that we see on running forums is people worried about their gaits. They're saying that they've got some sort of that the leg turns in or they overpronate, and they get themselves built up into a big worry and a panic. Is it what should we reckon about? Is it possible to predict what type of injury somebody's going to get from looking at their gait? Is gait a factor in injury? Sort of the way somebody's moving. Can we look at the way somebody's moving and say you're going to get such and such an injury?
So I think I'm losing a little bit of internet after that. It's difficult because everyone moves slightly differently, and it may be that that's the way they've always moved, and so those muscles and the bones and the joints, ligaments around those structures are going to be nice and strong. But we can have an idea, I suppose, once you get used to looking at how people move in, and you can see if they are putting a little bit of excess load through a particular area of the body. that may sort of highlight that. So what I would say to people is, look, this may be a little bit of an issue here. If you start getting problems around this area, then it's worth investigating. This could be an area here. So we can, I suppose, just from experience and the amount of times we've done it, and when we see injuries come through with certain movement patterns, say this may be an issue. So again, that information we give people as just an education thing. You know, say if your running increases and you're starting to get pains down here, it could be the way that you're moving, and then maybe this is the best way to address that. You know, we give them a few little checklists of things to do.
Yeah, so it's a matter of not
everybody moves slightly.
So it's a matter of not trying to change it then, but waiting, because something may never happen. But if something does happen, then you've got an idea of what may be causing the issue.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's worth them saying, look, this could potentially be an issue. How about, you know, changing that? And it may help with your overall efficiency and speed in the way you're running anyway. So we may not be looking at making a massive change, but if there's something, so again, going back to that overstride position that's causing the need to drop in, go, well, actually, if you take out the overstride anyway, you're going to be running more efficiently and it's going to feel a little bit easier anyway. So it's worth making those changes to potentially try and, as long as you're not putting the load onto something else, that's the issue. So if you're taking a load off somewhere, taking it off somewhere, you've got to put it somewhere else. So it's just changing that force. That's the important thing.
Yeah. Okay, then should we have a look at some of the slides?
Yep. Let's have a look at what we feel is good technique, good form posture.
Yeah.
Let's just have a look here. So these are those sort of basic principles, I suppose, of what I tend to look for when people come in for a gait analysis, and what we'll sort of try and fit people into, really. So the first thing we generally look at is the posture. So standing tall, nice and upright, a little bit of a forward lean's okay, as long as it's coming from the feet and not from the hips. So you don't want to see that sort of hitching position through the hips, so almost sort of running as if people are sitting down. So that's what I said about if you're spending a lot of time sitting down at your desk, in the car, driving or whatever, your glutes and hamstrings are not particularly activated during that process, and hip flexors are. So it's very easy to get into that slightly sort of slumped position and use all the muscles through the front of your body to pull yourself forward. So you're just getting yourself a little bit taller, keeping your arms swing behind you. So think about elbows coming back behind you. So driving the elbows back behind automatically allows the legs and the feet to follow. So we're trying to reduce the amount of pull forward, sort of through the hip flexors and pulling the feet and legs forward, and trying to stand nice and tall and pushing the ground away behind. So that puts you into a much better position where you're using all the muscles down the front of your legs and all the muscles down the back of your legs much more effectively. And then the contact close to underneath as possible, again, for the running speed. So we don't want to be trying to hit the ground right underneath us, because it's virtually impossible unless we're sprinting. But the further we are out in front of us, the higher that impact force back through the body, and also the longer it takes for us to get our center of mass, our body, our pelvis, over our foot into that push phase. So running's a lot more efficient if actually we're generating that propulsive force behind us. We're pushing the ground away behind. So the less time we spend from our contact to getting to that point, the better, basically. So you imagine if you're running along and you're hitting the ground right underneath you, all contact time is going to be in about producing propulsive forces and minimizing the impact forces. Then the higher the heel comes up behind us, again, it's basic sort of physics of getting that heel or the foot from off the ground behind us back on the ground in front of us. So the faster that swing phase is, again, the more efficient we are running, and we'll be using a lot more of the elastic recoil through the tissues. So when we stretch our leg out behind us and the opposite arm swing coming back behind us, we're sort of creating tension all the way across our body. And if we can stretch it out behind us, think of it like an elastic band, to use this analogy of that, stretching that foot out behind us, the further we can stretch it out behind, take it off the floor, and it's going to return that energy back through the swing phase. So running quicker is about getting your foot off the floor, back through the air and back down on the floor again. So the faster that swing phase leg swing is, the better and more effectively we're going to be running. And the foot activated through the swing phase is just the toes lifting up, so we're not dropping the foot down, but we're actually making that nice strong foot through the swing phase. So they're basically the basic principles. It's posture, standing nice and tall, arms and driving back behind us, contact close to underneath the body, minimalizing the overstride and that impact forces, and really increasing the propulsive forces, so generating that drive and push behind you. And that's basically all there is to it, and we'll fit people into that category. Some people are going to have a really high heel lift behind them, some people it's not going to come up much at all. But if we can change any one of these, even a small amount, is going to make running just feel a little bit easier, a little bit more efficient. And I suppose the poor technique is basically, just while we're on this subject, is the opposite of that, anything above. So running quite often feels like quite hard work. It's very noisy, so if you're hitting the ground heavy in front of you, it's going to sound a lot noisier. It's hard on your body and your mind because it just feels like hard work. It doesn't feel like you're getting anywhere. That feeling of almost sort of running through treacle, especially as the run goes on, as you get tired. The more you sit back and the more you roll your body through and the more you sort of roll your arms across in front of you, the harder the running becomes. People get frustrated with injury. Either the same injury keep coming back or going round the houses with injuries. So it starts with a foot injury, then an ankle and a knee, and then your hip or your back or something, as your body just keeps compensating more and more, and then it runs out of options, basically. And if you're trying to change your speed or endurance and you just keep getting to the same point where you're just breaking down, can't get any faster, or you can't run for any longer, again, it's probably down to sort of technique and form. If you tried everything else, which is what most people try and do, they try and change the training, the nutrition, and everything, and then people go, oh, okay, maybe it's how I'm moving, which I suppose from our podiatry point of view, it's a little bit frustrating because it's the bit that we really feel we need to be addressing to start with. So get your technique sorted out, you can work, then you know which strength and conditioning to work on, you know which running drills to use, and everything else will fit in place behind that, really.
Yeah, I think one of the most frustrating things when people have been looking on Google or on Facebook for running technique advice, and then they find a lot of things on like Kai running and pose running and other various techniques like that. What's your take on those type of techniques rather than?
Well, they're all going to have a different impact again on the body, and it's what you're wanting to do. So if you're wanting to go, I suppose, sort of fairly, and a lot of what we've talked about there is sort of basically using those principles, and a lot of it is it's just reducing time on the ground, increasing the cadence, and whichever way you sort of decide to do that, it's going to just improve the running. So yeah, there's lots of different ways out there. Find something that works for you, do it properly, and it's not just a case of, say, with like try running, key running, and just really going for a very fast cadence. You've got to train your body how to do that as well. So it's not a case of going from 150 to the magic 180, 200 steps per minute, and that's just a number that was plucked out of the air, by the way. But you've got to use it gradually, and you'll find that you get to the point where you want to go, okay, I'm happy with this. If I try and do it any differently, then we start breaking down the other end of it. So it's just finding that middle ground. But say any move at all into a slightly better posture, into a reduced overstride, into introducing a faster cadence is got to be a better way to go with it. I'm going the other way, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. If we have a look at some, I think we've got some videos, haven't we, of running technique and changes.
Yeah, I've got on here. This is people who have been on my or seen stuff I've done before, but this is my favourite gait analysis. Get out. Okay.
There we go.
Is that playing now? Oh, there we go. This is my daughter a few years ago, and this is again still one of the best gait analysis videos that I have, basically. And we'll talk it through. You can see that contact comes right underneath, that nice straight leg out behind her as she pushes through. So she does roll a little bit through the arms and the shoulders, but we'll let her off for that a little bit here. And looking sideways at the cameraman's never a good thing. But we'll just run that through again. So we've got that forward lean, but it's a whole body, it's straight. She's not hitching from the hips here. And as she gets into speed, comes up nice and tall, contact position underneath, and we're looking for that straight leg out the back. If we've got a straight leg out the back, we know we've got good extension through the glutes, through the hamstrings, and that nice heel pick up. But that's just the elastic recoil that's doing it. So she's not consciously, and when we're running, we shouldn't be consciously trying to pick our heels up. It should be as we push the ground away hard behind it, naturally that foot just pings back through that swing phase. And so the closer it is to our bum, the smaller that cycle, and the quicker it is. For those of you old enough, remember Roadrunner cartoon where we've got that little wheel that runs out behind. Some people call this the runner's wheel, because it's sort of just driving out behind there. Run it through. So this is good. Watch children run. They run so nice and efficiently. It's only as we get older and a bit stiff and we spend all our time just stuck on the floor sitting down. Yeah, when we did the little workshops for Accelerate and we got kids there, you ask them to run quicker and they just pick the heels up. They stand tall and run. Whereas adults, we start pulling and dragging ourselves forward, which is not the best way. So we start rotating through and it all gets really hard work, and kids just stand tall and just power through that push phase. That's the best way. Watch children run quickly.
Yeah, I think that stomping one's quite a common thing that beginner runners have. And then as they tend to get a bit stronger and a bit fitter, then they sort of start making some improvement to the gait, just through the strength that they've picked up from running. But
yeah. And I think as well, when people start off, they're almost a little bit conscious, and you do sort of just sit back a little bit, and you don't want to do a big stride, and you want to keep it nice and tight and compact. And whereas actually you've got to just stand a little bit tall and just let it go and just allow the arms to move. And it's actually fine to be running like that if you're a beginner runner as well. And that's what I try and get across to people when they come in. It's like, you're okay, don't worry about it. It may feel as if it's looking a little bit funny to you, but it won't be to people out there. It's just because it's a new movement pattern. It does feel strange, and it sort of sends our brain into a little bit of protective mode. Whereas actually we just got to let it go. Just go and run and move.
Yeah, not worry about it too much.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got Sarah Jane Hooper's watching. Hello. We've got Leanne Snelson watching from over the road. So hello to you. And we've got a question from Carol Bird, who's she's going to kill me for saying this, but she's absolutely a fantastic runner. She says, my cadence is, according to Strava, 196 to 200 plus. Can cadence ever be too high? Bearing in mind that Carol's fantastic.
To do that. Obviously not, it's perfect. No, what you've got to think about is the faster is how you're generating that power through your running, how you're doing it. And if you've got a very, very fast cadence, it's going to be a lot about pull. You don't have time to generate a lot of push. So it's that balance between push and cadence, which is the important thing. So if you're very slow cadence, go completely the opposite way. You're spending too much time on the ground, that's a problem. And as you take your cadence up, spending less time on the ground, but you've got to generate more power per push, basically. And if you start going really quickly, you almost don't have time to push, but you have to start pulling a lot more. So you're using your hips and your body to pull that through. And some people run like that really efficiently, and it's the way their body works really well, and that's the way they've got strong, and that's the way they do strength back. So there's nothing wrong with it. So there are, again, as you said about running shoes, there aren't right or wrong ways to do things, but there are ways that suit your body. And if you're training your body to work in that way, then that's absolutely fine. So we work on people who come in and they want to go really minimalist, and some people, we work with people who want to do barefoot running. We've got to get really fast cadence because you don't want to be on the ground. You're only going to get injured when you're on the floor, is what I sort of tell people. While you're flying through the air isn't a problem. It's the contact and the time on the floor that's the issue. So if we can minimize that, then there's less chance of injuries.
Yeah, I think it's also worth saying, if you've got two people of different heights, so you've got a tall person who we're going to assume has got really long legs and a short person with very short legs, if they're both running at the same speed, they're both going to have different cadence.
Yeah, or different stride. Yeah.
You can't say the one's right and one's wrong. It's just they've got to be moving differently if they've got different legs.
Yeah, it's that time on the ground. It's what we say. about sort of body weight, really. Just because you're a heavy person doesn't mean you're going to have a heavy contact.
Yeah.
So it sort of comes back to that, really. If you're on the ground for not much time at all, and you've got a minimal overstride, and you're generating a very, very fast cadence, you generally lose more power behind you, you're going to have a really light running style. It's going to be really quiet. Whereas you could be short-legged and slim, but if you've got an overstride and you're spending a lot of time on the ground, you're going to sound really heavy. So we'll see that. I mean, most people, if they've got that classic sort of sitting back overstride position, they'll be on the ground for maybe a quarter of a second. Whereas if you're looking at, I suppose, sort of more elite runners running quickly, they'll be down to sort of 0.12 of a second. So they'll be spending half the amount of time on the ground when we're doing sort of the in-shoe pressure analysis. We'll get that data. So that's one thing we'll look at as well if people go down that route with the in-shoe pressure data is how much time you're spending on the floor. So it needs to shorten, but you could get to the point where you're not on there long enough to develop enough power, enough push.
Yeah,
that's the issue with that.
Yeah. Okay, so how can we change gait then? What's the if somebody does need their gait changed, they've got persistent injury, how can we go about changing it? What?
That's right. Yes. So looking at what we're going to do now, so we basically what we talked about there with the CAID posture's got to be the first thing that we tend to talk about with people, using the whole of the body much more efficiently. So rather than just sort of running through the feet or the legs, actually looking at the way we get that sort of rotation, creating that tension for our upper body, using the arm swing. Cadence that we just talked about a little bit. Most people generally benefit from going a little bit quicker, faster cadence, shortening the stride as well. So again, not spending as much time on the ground. That's the important thing. Backing all that up with the strength and conditioning. So running specific exercise is really, really important. So what we call by running specific exercises, things that are mimicking the running action to a certain extent as well. So doing things like split squats, deadlifts, squats to a certain extent, but a lot of crossover type work as well. So maybe doing sort of swinging kettlebell type things in sort of running posture. So with doing a long lunge behind and bringing the leg all the way through up into that sort of high knee lift and then all the way back again. So running specific type exercises can be really, really important. Yeah. And then do running drills as well.
Yeah, and adding more load to that than they generally have whilst running to make the body more robust and stronger in those movements.
Yeah, absolutely. So making it a little bit harder. And those exercises and drills, when we're going out and doing drill sessions with people, we're saying, right, this has got to be done 100%. You've got to be doing this drill as absolutely as perfectly as possible you can. Because if you're doing it 100% during doing the drill work, you're probably going to remember 60–70% of it when you're actually out running, if that may be. So when you drill work for that short period of time, and we'll tend to work on drills over a very short period of time, you've got to be doing it as perfection. And if we're out with the video as well, we'll be really critical of people as well, saying, look, that arm's coming across or you're not right. Because that's the only way you're going to do it. You've got to make the body work a lot harder, and it goes back into normal running. Surprising then how easy it feels. And the way we do the drills isn't necessarily going to be the way that you're going to run the whole time. But while you're running that drill, then let's over-exaggerate those movements. Let's make that arm swing really work. Let's bring the heel up a little bit higher, bring that contact in a little bit closer. And so then when we go back into normal running, it's going to go out a little bit, but it's still better than it was. That's the main thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So can we have a look at some of the changes that you've made with people?
Some of those other pictures and see, yeah. Let's just have a look. Yeah, let's just go through those again. Let's get rid of Ellie. Should be pleased for that. Yeah, some of you, so I suppose you're going for a gait analysis as high view. This is things we'll look through here, just as a point before we look at some of the pictures underneath here. So let's have a look through here. So this is still one of the triathletes. So the pictures on the left are from the initial assessment, and the pictures are on the right is then when we've done some little bit of work with going through the analysis, and we're also looking at some shoes as well. I mean, Jill's quite interesting. She came up to see me because she was at this point was in support shoes. She'd gone back in support shoes with having problems. and it didn't really seem to be helping. But we can see from our running contact position here, she's taking overstride. I mean, she was a pretty good runner anyway, but we've still got a little bit of overstride going on. The heel's out in front of the knee, which is definitely out in front of the hip. So, and the foot's just not quite flat there. So I'll look at the initial contact and also where the foot's flat. We want to see the knee moving over the foot really quickly. We can see the knee is still just behind. Whereas in the picture on the right, we've got a flat foot contact and the knee is a lot more vertical over the foot, and she's going to be moving through that contact position a lot quicker. And also just looking at where the swing leg's coming through, it's a lot higher through that heel lift, and they're a little bit further along, but that's because we brought the overstride has come back underneath it, but it's still the same point. That's where the foot is now hitting the floor. So the heel's up a lot higher behind her, which means the glute's going to be a lot more activated. When the heel's up this high and we've got the hamstring and the glutes, they've got to be working much more effectively on the contact leg. It's a lot more relaxed through the shoulders and arm swings as well. So we can see on the left-hand picture here, her shoulders up quite high in the elbow. It is driving back, but there's a lot of tension being carried up around the neck and around the shoulders, which isn't going to help. So these are the positions. If you're videoing yourself, which we can do now, say with most people, even with your phone, get someone to video from the side view and then stop at these points and just have a look and see how far your contact is out in front of you. If it's underneath, have a look at the training leg, just have a look through your body. Where's that posture? Jill's got good posture on there, but still carrying a lot of tension up through her shoulders. If you go into the mid-stance phase.
Oh, what's the time period between these two videos?
This would be pretty much in a session that we would do, so maybe a couple of hours. Most of these long run sessions that we do in the clinic are about 2 hours long. Okay. So maybe an hour. So what we do with some of them, we go through the analysis, do the biomechanical assessment, we do the run analysis, then analyse it, have a look at it all, then see what we need to change, do the static exercises, and then get people back on the treadmill and basically try and make these changes straight away, so people get an idea about how it feels. So when they're leaving the clinic, they know what that good running position feels like, and they'll have the video to back that up as well. So when they're out running, they've got to work hard at trying to find that position. As I said before, it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable sometimes for people. They're out of their comfort zone. They've probably not run this way since they were children, and we're just trying to get them back into that feeling of, yeah, I can run in that way and I can make these changes, and this is a process we've got to go through to. So then we'll maybe sort of analyse again. We'll give them maybe 3, 4, 6 weeks, depending on their level of ability, what they feel they want from it, and then get back in and have another look. See. You can see from the mid stance here, I don't know if you can quite see whether we're over the screen there a little bit, but the main thing to look through here is the legs. So Jill's pretty good, but we're looking at parallel floor, leg and arm. It's a really good indication about how good your posture is through that mid stance phase. So if the leg is really dropped down underneath here, or the arm is up, or whatever, that's not a good position. So we can see on the other side here, we've got the ground, the leg and the arm all parallel, really good indicators. So I tend to do the mid-stance as knees level. So we've got both knees in the same position, and there, say the things to look for again. And again, a little bit of tension through the shoulders and a little bit drop down through here. Again, overall posture, how much tension, and those three, arm, leg, ground, all in a parallel position. Unless we're working outside on the hill with fell runners and it's slightly different, but generally most people on the flat, that's what you're looking for. Push phase. So again, what we talked about before, we need this nice straight leg out the back. So she's doing really well on that position here, but you can see we drop down through the pelvis, got a little bit of body rotation going on. So again, a little bit of pull through the shoulder, pull through the hand in front. Whereas this position here, much more upright, much more relaxed through the shoulders, and again, got that good extension. Higher knee through that swing phase. And this is a really good point at toe off. Ideally, we want the back leg and the front leg parallel. Is that showing up on everyone's screen here? So we've got that tibia, the lower leg and the back leg are parallel. Whereas on the push on this one here, the back leg's nice and straight, but the front leg is slightly in front. So again, that's a really good indication we're going to go into an overstride. So just those sort of points really, if you get someone to say video, you just stop and look at these points here, and the closer you are to parallel at toe off, that's a better position. Knee up a little bit higher, and that leg knocks through a bit again. Of just overusing the body. So really putting a big twist through the body underneath it, and this is nice and stable. So that's just going to be a little bit more time, using a bit more of the body than we need to create that push. And I think we might be able to play these so we can see it in action here. Got slightly different recording speed on the camera, unfortunately, because of the light in the shop's not as good as in the clinic.
Yeah.
But we can just see the picture on the new one here is just looking a little bit easier. They're both on the treadmill at the same speed, but we've got that contact position comes in much further. So the foot looks like it goes out, but when it hits the floor, it's actually underneath. And we've got almost that sort of a little bit more effortless sort of push. So all the drive is happening through the hamstrings and the glutes, and a lot less going on through the body through that rotation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Is it? Yeah, if
I know you're the only one that's
questions, then fire away. We'll try and split your questions as they come up on Facebook. So if anyone has any questions for Colin, then yeah, fire away.
But it's just trying to get, and sometimes it's difficult to say exactly what's happening, but you can just see she's just looking a lot more relaxed, just a lot easier. The running just looks a little bit more effortless. And often when we're doing this with people, often if we're working on the treadmill, we will have to put the treadmill speed up. We will just naturally go a little bit quicker. But as that question came in earlier, it's making this new position sustainable that's the important thing. And this is where all the background strength work and the drills work comes in. So it's making it stick. That's the hard bit.
Yeah. So we've had another question for Katrina. What did you change with it?
Oh,
how did you make that difference?
How do we work on that?
Yeah.
A lot of it is just showing people their position, and often they'll just sort of see it, and it makes so much sense when you have people on the treadmill or even doing an outside sort of video analysis, which often we do. And when they see themselves in it, and it sort of answers so many questions for a lot of people, and a lot of it is, it's just those basic things. We work at always start at the head with people. When we're on the treadmill in that position, I'll stand next to them and say, right, just your head position, just relax through your shoulders, just allow that arm swing just to go. And being aware of just creating that little bit of tension through your pelvis. So before we get on the treadmill, say we'll go through all those exercises, and it could be down to we're just getting someone to actually teach them how to breathe properly. So using proper sort of deep diaphragm breathing. If they're sort of breathing through the chest, we've got to get that tension out from high up and get it lower down. We'll do the specific exercises that are switching on hamstrings and glutes. We'll do the activation work. So, and often just doing a glute bridge to start with properly, and not rolling through your back, but actually just using the glutes and hamstrings properly. So a lot of people come and say, yeah, I'm doing loads of glute bridges. And when we actually break it down to the proper movement, they're not actually doing a glute bridge, they're lifting through their back. And once we take that out of the equation, they often find it very hard. So part of the assessment, rather than just getting on the treadmill and run, will be identifying these issues beforehand as well. They are actually using the muscles correctly at the right time. So we would have gone through that, just activated hamstrings, do the hamstring switch on, and talk about it and say, right, so we go on that posture tool, got to relax your shoulders and just work your way down, and then get the arm swing working, just generate the tension through the pelvis. I tend to work on the push phase before we start looking at contact, because if everything else is working, the contact will sort itself out. If someone has a big overstride problem, then we'll talk about contact position. But generally, if you get the posture right, the arm swing right, you relax through the shoulders, you generate some propulsive force, the contact just goes. And often on the treadmill, you'll hear that it will change, and you almost find that sweet spot. So they'll go from making a noise, and all of a sudden it'll go very quiet. And it's almost a light bulb moment for people when they hit that, when they're running. It's like, oh, it's quiet. How did that happen? And then they won't think about it, and we'll say, right, go back into bad position. So lean forward, roll through your shoulders. It gets noisy again. Come back out of that, stand taller, drive back with your elbows, and you'll find that sweet spot. You can just switch it on and off with people really, really quickly. And with some people, if they're coming in with calf injuries, especially, again, oh, my calves are tightening up, and go, right, get back into your good posture, stand tall, keep running, don't drop the speed, just keep going, and just keep pushing away. And sometimes you can just switch these things on and off that easily. It does happen.
Well, once you've found the right cues for people, then it does happen. It's just like that, isn't it? But I think a lot of people, when they've been looking on the forums and on Google, they're more concerned about which part of their foot's contacting the ground. Whereas if they forget about what part of the foot's contacting the ground and concentrate on what's happening sort of further up the system, then the whole thing the rest of it just falls into place anyway.
It does, yeah. Yeah, we don't worry about which bit of the foot. It is almost relevant. It's where it is in relation to the rest of your body that's important. Because you can have an overstriding forefoot strike or an overstriding heel strike. They're both not great, to be honest. And we see this a lot of people that have tried to change their gait. They've read about sort of forefoot running, and they basically haven't changed anything apart from which bit of the foot hits the floor. So they've gone from having a nice, comfortable heel strike into a very uncomfortable forefoot strike, and all of a sudden metatarsals are really, really struggling. So yeah, it's about body position, posture is the key, and yeah, generating that propulsive force, not worrying about which bit hits the floor.
Yeah, I think a good example is I can't remember, it's the older of the two Brownlee brothers, athlete, and he's got a very pronounced forefoot strike where his foot lands like very far in front of him, and as a result then the ligaments around his lateral ankle are absolutely shot as a result. So he's like having constant physiotherapy to keep his ankles moving. But people used to praise his running style, saying that he had a very good forefoot strike, whereas really it's the positioning of his foot in relation to his body. Yeah, it's completely out.
I think if you have got a natural overstride, it's really difficult to get it back in. I see people that do just want to go out and run, and they're quite happy doing 5-10Ks. They've got a fairly sedentary job, and they don't want to do all the strength work. They're not bothered about that. It's like, well, if you're going to be in that position, you are better off having, a supportive shoe with a heel straight type running position. And sacrificing a little bit of that glute and hamstring work, but then you strengthen up through the quads, through the hips, do loads of strength work. If you want to do that through, doing squats and things as well. So again, there's not right and wrong. It's what suits you. Some people are just coming and going, actually, I'm quite happy in this position. And we're not going to try and change anything too much with them, but they know they can have limitations with that type of running style.
Yeah. I think if you go back to one of the earlier questions, is a in-store gait analysis good? Generally, I think that the in-store gait analysis, they're usually from behind, aren't they? Usually in the frontal plane rather than in the sagittal plane, which is where sort of most of the movement happens, really, and with running.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one on. We can just have a look at actually. I can see the difference. So yeah, that's a side view that we can see. We can see a lot of what's happening. Get this again. So yeah, from the back view, here we go. So we look at the pelvis. This is the big thing often you'll get from the pelvis. So the arm swing we can see as well, hip, knee, foot alignment, but often what you'll find from a running shop is basically just the heel pronation, and that's basically all they're looking for. So that's the lower bit of the leg. But again, if we're looking at the whole of the body here, so we can see if the arms are sort of swinging out wide or if they're coming in nice and compact. Again, we can see that tension through our upper body. The big thing with the pelvis, and this is what everyone's look for with the glutes, is when we hit the floor, say now on a left leg, how far does that right side of the pelvis drop? Again, right side, how much drop we're getting through. So this shows that the small glutes, not the small glutes, the stabilizing glutes, how effectively they're working. So ideally want to minimize that opposite drop. So hit on the left, drop on the right, hit on the right, that little bit of drop on the left, hit on the left, that little bit of drop on the right. So that's what we're trying to eliminate as much as possible. But again, if people are not doing huge amounts of strength, I think a little bit of movement through here is fine. And then we can just see the knee just comes in through that after that contact phase as well. And this is going to be part of what's following through the foot. But it also can be part of just people's natural makeup. The way your foot and your leg is linked together. Some people will naturally have this little bit of drop through the knee as we load it. It's just that natural coupling mechanism. So again, we've got to work out how much is okay and how much is not okay, basically going to cause a problem. And we can see Jill's foot here, foot position, just that rear foot position. There's very, very little rear foot movement at all. And I think there's sort of a lot traditionally, a lot of running shops will say, actually, that shoe's doing well, it's a neutral. But if anything, I would say that's actually doing too much support. We're not getting enough movement through the foot, through the heel. It could be why the knee and the hips having to do more work. because we've got to accommodate those loading forces somehow. And if it's not happening through the foot, it's got to go somewhere. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to keep moving forward. We're going to stop. So distributing those forces across the whole of the body is going to be a lot easier on the body if we can do that. So yeah, so actually having a foot that's not moving very much isn't necessarily a good thing either. We need some movement through that.
Yeah.
But then going into the
that's one of the big hang-ups that I have with in-store gait analysis is they're all, and what we read on the forums as well, as people are too concerned about overpronation still. It seems to be,
yeah.
I think the general trend is people are getting more educated now, but there's still a lot of people talking about overpronation for the type of shoes that they're buying, and I think.
Yeah. So the issue here is there's not enough pronation going on. Basically, that foot's being held too rigid, and we can see that she goes off into the push-off phase, definitely pushing off the outside of the foot and not through the big toe. And if you're pushing off the outside of the foot, it's really, really difficult to get that extension through the hamstrings and the glutes working properly, unless you can override like Jill was able to stay short term, but not off the end of a marathon. It's going to struggle with that. So we need that foot working a little bit more effectively. But yeah, the rear view does give us some good indication, but side view tends to give you a lot more information, because this doesn't tell us anything what's happening at the time we move the extension, where the contact is or anything. And we know she's overstriding, but we can't necessarily see it from this angle here. So the overstride will give us a lot more problems than the heel rolling in during the initial contact phase. And actually much more important is how the foot's leaving the floor. And we're pushing off the outside of the feet here. So again, not a good strong position to be in. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got a few more people watching. We've got Mary Smith, Sarah Louise Richards, who's obviously given up doing her MSc work this evening, and Iris Whitehouse is watching as well. So hello to all of you. We've got another question from Elaine Massey. How do you do a proper glute bridges? I don't seem to feel it in my glutes, but do know I roll using my back.
But you've got to switch the back off. This is Andrew might be better at answering this one than myself. But what I generally get people to do, and one of the other day, is basically if you lay on your back, try and push your spine down into the floor to eliminate that little gap just above your pelvis in your lumbar spine. So push that hard onto the floor, lift one leg up off the floor, and then basically try and lift off the other leg, which is a really difficult one to do without arching through your back. It's not using your back, it's keeping your back stable that's the important thing, and still doing the movement. I don't know whether you want to add anything onto that, Andrew.
I think I do like that way of doing things. Try and keep the pelvis solid so it doesn't move. But one of the best cues that we can give people is to feel like you're pushing down through your heel rather than through your toes. I think if you're pushing down, if you get that feeling of pushing down through your heel, then that does get those glutes working a bit more.
But it's a common thing we see with people that they do tend to lift. So you tend to lift through the back, you arch through the back when you're doing those glute bridges, and push down through the heel, just keeping that pelvis flat, and it just takes all the movement out of the back. It's something that makes glute bridging really, really difficult.
Yeah. And I think getting some squats and deadlifts going on as well, because if you're able to squat and deadlift, then you have to be using those glutes to get them moving. There's no way you can squat and deadlift without using glutes. So
and the other one we tend to do to help that movement as well is to do a just normal step up, again in the whole of the heel onto the box or the step that you're stepping onto. And then sort of driving your weight down through the back of your leg, through the heel onto the floor, while doing almost like a walking movement, but a high knee lift on the opposite side as well. But waking that leg, be fully extend, so your knees fully straight with your heel down on the floor, and don't try and bounce up onto your toes at the end of that movement. So basically, it's just engaging that what we call the posterior chain. So glutes, hamstring, calf. That's the way the body's got to work into that push-off phase.
Yeah, absolutely. Right then, the time, we've actually gone over 7 o'clock now. So have you got any last questions now for Colin? Just give it a few seconds for last few questions. So I was just waiting for any last questions to come through. Colin, if anybody wants to get in contact with you, where's the best place for them to to get in touch with you?
My main clinic's got a website which is coldpodtherapies.co.uk, or the running shop's accelerateuk.com, which is the one based in Sheffield where we do a lot of the analysis. Sort of running analysis, where we've got the shoes in there as well to do things. So yeah, either through my own website, Instagram @coldpod on there, or again through the Accelerate Running Co. through Instagram. All those good places. Initial point of contacts.
Okay, have you got any events going on in the?
Well, we have lots, but not at the moment. No, I mean, through Accelerate we do regular shoe try-on days, or sort of evenings, afternoons. Days coming on there. Running workshops, so which we'll do, yeah, through either out in the Peak District, either flat or hill stuff. They tend to be 4-hour sort of workshops. They're sort of, yeah, there's nothing sort of planned at the moment, everything's just been scrapped, but they're sort of stuff that are going on throughout the year. There's a big running weekend that we do through Accelerate, which is usually the end of March, which is a whole weekend of trail running. Various things. So I think you just keep an eye on the websites really and see what's happening.
Yeah.
I think wherever you are, really look at your independent running shops, because a lot of them do shoe test days and have these sort of advice sessions as well. I know sort of Derby Runner down there, us as well, they're sort of doing a lot more talks and information evenings as well. They're really sort of bigging up the independent running shops. They're all really working hard, and they're going to really need everybody's help coming out of this too.
There's a wealth of knowledge at the independent stores as well.
Easy sometimes to go online and click the buttons, but to go into a shop and actually get some really good advice is worthwhile.
Yeah. Okay, we've got another. Yeah, we've got one more question from Carol Bird. Can I ask your opinion on heel drops? Is it an individual thing, or is one better than the other? I like good heel drop and arch support, but hear a lot about zero drop. I worry that they can cause Achilles problems. Obviously, something like that should be introduced gradually. Can you wear both? Yes, I think just talk about the drop in running shoes from.
Yeah, that's what we mentioned the other day a little bit. Yeah, definitely. We tend to find if someone is coming in, like we saw with Jill on the video there, into a support shoe with a lot of heel, the easiest way to reduce an overstride is take the heel off the shoe. And naturally, most people, not everybody, but most people, the contact position will start to come back in a little bit. We've got to put the posture changes in above that if they can do it. But yeah, going into a lower drop shoe will automatically put a lot more strain through the Achilles and into the calf muscle. So it needs to be done gradually, and you need to compensate, protect that a little bit with dynamic calf exercises and Achilles exercises, not just put them on and carrying on the same level of training. One thing, if you are in a shop to do, so gradually come down from where you are. So we may, if someone's coming in with a 12mm support shoe, we'll go down to an 8mm with a little bit of stiffness in, see how it goes. And often we're listening to it and it will go quieter. And if you go too low, it will suddenly get really noisy again as someone's having to work really hard. So you find it yourself a little bit. And some people say, actually, I'm going to go really comfortable, I'm going to stay at 8mm, or some people go, right, I'm going to go to 4mm, and they know they're going to put a lot of strain through the body. So we're sort of working with that a little bit, but generally a flatter shoe means you'll have less overstride and less time on the floor. So if you're looking at reducing time on the ground, increasing your cadence is really, really difficult to do in a high drop shoe and a support shoe. You've got to get the support and the weight out of the shoe to do that. But so it can be done, and it's whether you want to go down to that. I mean, I've tried lots of zero drops. I do find them quite hard to run in. I prefer sort of 3 or 4mm is ideal for me. Zero, it's just, I could put all the work in, but I think actually, really, do I want to put all that work into it so I can run in zero drop? They're fine for a short period of time. I love the ultra shoes. But yeah, it's not my everyday shoe, definitely. Yeah, give me about 3 or 4mm. It just keeps those calves a little bit happier.
Yeah. So we've got mention from Anna Evans, the big running weekend. Colin talking about his fab and dirt cheap. So yeah, it's a bit of things there. Carl Bear's giving a big shout out. Carl's giving a big shout out for Running Bear, which is a local running shop around this side.
Yeah. definitely support those independents.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think if there's any podiatrists on here that are listening in, again, that if you are dealing with runners, go and talk to your local running shops. It's really, really important to build those links through, because you may have an idea of what you want, and if they're still using, I suppose, just sort of rear fit analysis, or people are coming in and they're not quite sure why you're suggesting they go into a certain shoe, but yeah, go and talk to them and work with them. Really, really works well.
Absolutely. Okay, then we best wrap it up there. Thanks, we're a bit over time now. So thank you very much, Colin, and thank you very much for everybody that's come to listen.